to start in Manchester. The Manchester derby, Stevie, Nicol. Manchester United 0, Manchester City 3. How big was the gap and the gulf between the two sides?
Oh, I think if anybody had tuned into the last 10 minutes of this game, they would have figured out the gulf. I mean, it was just Man City fans olaying at Old Trafford. I mean, how many times have you ever seen that? And Man United, again by the end, just looked like a sorry bunch that felt sorry for themselves. Were trying to kick City players, had lost their discipline. I mean, in terms of football, these two teams are miles apart. In fact, worlds apart. It was a comprehensive victory. If you're United, you'll probably try and grasp onto a couple of really good chances in the game. But the truth of the matter is, City could have scored 5 or 6 and just completely and utterly blew Manchester United away.
Going into the game earlier this year, Luis Miguel, when Manchester United won, having been a goal down, there were similar odds. City were huge favourites in that one, but they lost 2-1. You could tell pretty early on there wasn't going to be a repeat today.
Yeah, no chance. I mean, I'm just going to echo everything Stevie said and probably just add to it. So I'm sorry, Manchester United fans. You're going to have to hear a little bit more here. But they're completely two different teams under one city. And Manchester City, obviously, we know about how good they are under Pep Guardiola. Another strong victory, looking good, especially from a midweek performance against Young Boys in the Champions League. And everything you need to know about Manchester United today, MD, just says about, number one, I think every Manchester United fan should ask themselves, is Manchester United under Erik ten Hag better than the one that you saw under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer? Granted, they won a Carabao Cup last season, and granted, as you said, there were a few good wins last season, but anything else? I don't see anything else here. This Manchester United side has no identity, no formation, no strategy. They're reactive way too late. There's no clinical striker. I mean, I have to go back, I think, to the likes of Robin van Persie to really think about a clinical striker that they had. There is no leader. When you think about the great Manchester United captains, I think Bruno Fernandes gets too emotional and forgets about the leadership mentality of that aspect. And then all you have to do is look on the other side of the pitch and see that they have exactly that. I mean, think about somebody like Julian Alvarez, who just arrived to Manchester City. And he's now taken the game and the league with two hands. And they don't have anybody on the Manchester United side from that side. So I think that every Manchester United supporter should ask themselves. And I mean, obviously, I was there last week and every United fan wants the Glazers out. But there's a lot going on there that really needs a lot of questions. And at this point, I'm a fan of Erik ten Hag as a manager. I think he's a good man. But I don't see any significant improvement from the Dutchman to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer.
While United have Stevie, while United have regressed, this isn't about United. This is about Manchester. They're the ones that should get all the headlines. You've spent a fair bit of time there. Hold on. Luis Miguel spent a fair bit of time there talking about Manchester United. They're not the headline makers. Yes, they've got issues, but City were that good today, Stevie.
Disagree. Completely disagree.
Why?
Because there's not one person, when we spoke about this game before the ball was kicked, said anything other than Man City are going to completely wipe this team off the face of the earth. And that's exactly what happened. And I honestly believe that all the talk is about Man United. And Luis's point there about are they any better? Well, watching the final whistle and watching the reaction of the players and the fans and everybody else, it felt like Brentford. 2 seasons? Was it 2 seasons ago? I can't even remember. When they got beat 4-0, was it, at Brentford? This felt exactly how it was at Brentford. So, to answer Luis's question, no, this team hasn't moved one iota. So, I honestly think, Mark, that's the story. Listen, Man City, in the first half, well, again, in football terms, way ahead, but they kind of lacked a little cutting edge. United had 2 fantastic chances in the first half, and other than the penalty, City had won. The Ananas made a great save from Haaland. Now, second half, way better. Man City, way better. Should have scored 2 or 3 more. But, yeah, I honestly believe the story's Man United. And And where does Ten Hag go from here?
Okay, I mean, I see what you're saying, right? Man City have just won 3-0 at Old Trafford. They're within a couple of points of the lead. Erling Haaland was fantastic. They didn't have a failure. That is the narrative. Of course, Manchester United, we've got to talk about them. And you're both right, you and Luis Miguel. Yes, they have regressed. But if I'm a Man City fan watching this and I hear the first 5 minutes, the first 10 minutes of the three of us talking about Manchester United and their problems, of course we're going to discuss that. But let's give a little bit of kudos, Luis Miguel, to Manchester City for the way that they played.
MD, come on. I mean, listen. They're the treble winners. You know what you're going to get with Manchester City.
They lost the last time they were there when they were huge favorites.
Okay, but do you want more plaudits? I mean, okay, fine.
So you're not going to give them any plaudits for winning 3-0 today at Old Trafford?
I'll do it right now. Manchester City were fantastic in every asset of the game. And yes, there's a good point here because they have shown vulnerability already, right? They have already lost games in the Premier League this season. They haven't looked as omnipotent, but that's always usually the case at the beginning of the season. Having said that, today, Manchester City went to Old Trafford. By the way, a very emotional Old Trafford, and rightly so, under the tragic loss of Sir Bobby Charlton. It was a very emotional day for everybody, right? So it was a lot of high stakes, football aside. Today, they came in, they got the job done. Erling Haaland continues to be amazing. I talked to you already about Julian Alvarez, who I think is just ridiculous and possibly in many ways more significant than Erling Haaland sometimes because of all the things that he does. Rodri is back, Pep Guardiola is feeling good, and they are looking excellent. And today, when it's a derby, you need to get those 3 points. You need to win. You need to make it happen. And that's exactly what they did. So well done, Manchester City.
Okay.
But we got to talk about how terrible Manchester United are.
Yes, we do. But before we do that, Stevie Nicol, as a former defender, and the laws of the game are very different to when you played. What was your take on the penalty? 25th minute. It was VAR that pointed it out to Paul Tierney. By the way, come and have another look at this. Højlund and Rodri, there's a coming together and there's a tug and there's a hold and the penalty was awarded. Was he going to get the ball? Was he not? Was it a penalty for you or was it not?
Oh, it's 100% a penalty.
Okay.
You know, the referee can't see everything, and that's why VAR is so good, because it picks up things that referee can't see. I don't think anybody surely would argue that Højlund has stuck his left arm out, put it around Rodri and grabbed him. Now, again, you know, whether he's going to get that ball or not, again, was another argument. But the fact is, he probably wouldn't have. But that doesn't change that you can foul an opponent in the penalty box, regardless of whether he's going to get the ball or not. And quite honestly, they could have had another one with Haaland when he was held by Maguire. I mean, Maguire didn't hold him; he picked him up. So, yeah, in my opinion, that's 100% a penalty. You know, 100%. He has blocked Rodri with his left arm, almost clotheslined him, got it round him. You name it, it's a penalty kick. And I honestly can't imagine anybody other than Højlund is going to argue that.
Well, it doesn't take long to go through whether it's social media posts, to listen to post-game phone-ins, to see comments on YouTube under this. The Manchester United fans are saying it's never a penalty. Yes, there's contact, but if you're given that, no, of course, but in general, if you're given that, and what we see, the number of times we see a slow-mo of action taking place when a ball comes in and there's grappling and there's fouling and there's all sorts. I think what we're looking for here is consistency. Was it a penalty? Yes, it probably was a penalty. But why don't we see more of that given as a penalty, Luis Miguel? Because it happens more often and players know they're going to get away with it most of the time. In this case, Højlund didn't.
Yeah, I think that's my point as well, MD. I think, you know, it's about consistency and making sure that it happens every single time. It was a penalty because if you know, like you said, number one, first of all, if it's anywhere else on the pitch, it's a free kick, I think, right? So in the penalty, he had his arms around him. I mean, first of all, Højlund, you're a silly boy for doing that in the first place because you're asking for trouble, especially in the day and age of VAR. My only qualm about it was that it took a little bit of time to make that sort of decision happen, making the Manchester United support fan base a little angry. You should have just, you know, the ref has seen it, VAR come in, boom, to make a decision, that's a pen. But it is a pen. But yes, the most important, notable thing about all of this is that if you give that today, then you got to give it every single time. And that doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm. Stevie, Andre Onana, the Manchester United goalkeeper, had some really good saves and prevented Erling Haaland and a couple of others from adding to City's lead. How big an upgrade, if any, is he over David De Gea from what we've seen, not just today and recently where he's been okay, but the whole season?
I like the way you said recently he's been okay. I think that kind of answers your own question. I mean, listen, he's made a couple of great saves today. They're the type of saves that's why De Gea was at Man United for so long, because he's capable of pulling off those saves as well. But as we know, Ten Hag brought him in because of what he does with his feet, to the point that he doesn't take goal kicks anymore. They had Johnny Evans taking goal kicks and rolling it to him to play. So they're actually taking the ball off a football player so the goalkeeper can make the pass. So that tells you what Onana's feet are like. And I guess nobody again can argue that. His feet are way better than De Gea's. But De Gea made a lot of great saves. And Onana did that today as well. But as you rightly said, though, probably inadvertently, he's made some mistakes so far this season.
By the way, Stevie, when City saw the team sheet and they saw, especially Erling Haaland and Julian Alvarez, when they saw O'Shea, wow, I've just rewound the clock even further back. When
you go way back in time.
Wow. When they saw Steve Bruce and Gary Pallister on the team sheet, what were they thinking? When they saw Johnny Evans alongside Harry Maguire, in a bigger picture, what does that tell us right now? If that is what Manchester United are forced to kind of play against Manchester City, now we can speak about Manchester United's woes.
We have to believe that Varane wasn't 100%, because you can't play Johnny Evans or Harry Maguire for that matter before Varane. I mean, really? So there has to be. He must have come in this morning and felt a little neck or didn't feel well or something, because that makes no sense. I'm sorry, nobody saw that coming. And if Varane is 100%, I bet he's scratching his head thinking, hold on a second, why am I not playing in this game? So I don't understand it. And as you said, it kind of tells you where United are. They've got a centre-back at left-back who's out of position, who looks out of position. You've got Johnny Evans, who isn't getting a game for certainly any of the top 10 teams in the country. And you've got Harry Maguire, who got away with a bad mistake again when he tried some ridiculous header the opposite direction. It could ended up anywhere. So, yeah, if I'm Varane, I'm scratching my head. Unless, of course, there's a problem.
Luis Miguel, what are Manchester United now?
Wow.
Well, they're not Red Devils anymore because they don't scare anybody at this point. And by the way, just to note something, they spend essentially the same that Man City have spent in the last few seasons. So for any talk about all the money on the east side of Manchester at the Etihad, it's really about using it wisely. And of course, it helps to have arguably the greatest club manager in the history of the game in Pep Guardiola. And we've already talked about the question marks over Erik ten Hag as of late. But right now, this is what I think Manchester United are, which is kind of what I was talking about Tottenham last season before Ange Postecoglou came in and all that mess there. They are a team without an identity. And when you don't have an identity, regardless whether you're good or bad, then you are lost. Because at least with an identity, you know who you are. And you can have some kind of blueprint of what you want to do. So when I watch Manchester United week in and week out, I don't see an identity. Stevie, rightly so, talked about that back line. Is Onana better than De Gea? If he is, it's not a significant situation. Bruno Fernandes is not showing me the likes of what a leader really should be. They don't have a clinical striker, and they're relying a lot on a very young player who just arrived to the Premier League. Marcus Rashford is struggling, and he shouldn't be relied as a centre forward right now, because that's really not who he is, at least not for Ten Hag. So to me, the answer is this. Manchester United are a team with no script, with no identity. And when you have that, a very dangerous thing can happen, because every player can just be walking around in the proverbial fog into the oblivion. And that's going to be a problem.
Okay, the second goal really well set up by Bernardo Silva. Super finish by Erling Haaland. He was making sure he didn't miss that one. I thought the Onana save at the end of the first half was outstanding to deny Haaland, but he got his second and then he got his assist for Phil Foden. Stevie, are we starting to see City similar like last season, where it's not the quickest start in the world, but once they get going, they're going to be very hard to stop?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're actually they certainly haven't hit the stride yet. As I said before, that first half they were missing a cutting edge, a part. Now at the same time, we got to say that Man United was so deep and had so many players behind the ball that, of course, to try and pick passes with very little space is very difficult. But certainly after that second goal, the game was done, and City then just passed the ball around so easily. And I guess the question is, have Man City in that second half started to hit the stride, or were the opposition just so off the pace that it made it look so easy? But regardless of which way you want to look at it, you can't argue that they passed the ball around superbly and created some opportunities and scored some goals. So I think it's a bit early to say whether they're back to their best because of the opposition, but certainly they showed us that regardless of who they play, they can pass the ball around, no question.
I think the other thing, Luis Miguel, we've seen this season, we saw it last season as well from City, when they're not at their best, and I'm not saying they weren't today, but they're building up slowly and surely. They're still a lot better than a lot of teams, but they can slip up. We've seen that. So going forward, juggling Champions League, juggling cup competitions domestically, and league action as well. He made one or two changes today. Doku was left out. Grealish came in. What do you make of Manchester City's outlook between now and the rest of the season, given what they've done so far?
Yeah, I'm glad that you went there, because I'm looking towards the end of November and the beginning of December, MD, and that's going to be a nice little test for the defending champions. They have, obviously Chelsea, maybe they can figure it out with Pochettino. You never know. They lost to Brentford, of course, this weekend. But after that, Liverpool, then Leipzig, then at home to Tottenham, and Ange Postecoglou's very relentless side. Then the greatest club the game has ever seen in Aston Villa. They host Man City on December 6th. And then obviously Luton and stuff. But then the Champions League returns. So that December, late January should prove a little bit. But we have said that in the past, and we know that if there's a team that can handle it is Manchester City, with a roster and a bench of $350 million right there to back it up. Kevin De Bruyne's absence continues to really not be forgotten about, but again, I say his name again, players like Julian Alvarez and Bernardo Silva, of course, and Rodri's return are making it easier for them to do so. But I'm intrigued to see what happens when they have a tough run of fixtures against legitimate competition, because what Stevie said is true. Today, yes, Man City were very good, but it's also shows of what Manchester United are not. So I'm intrigued to see what happens at the end of November, beginning of December.